Ever think about like what it really takes to like run for office? And I'm not talking about um, the campaign promises or the debates and stuff, but like the systemic hurdles, the ones that are kind of hiding in plain sight.
It is interesting how these rules that seem so straightforward can have, well, unintended consequences,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about something as foundational as elections.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually what we're diving into today. We're going all the way to the Philippines for this one, an animal welfare advocate's journey to the Supreme Court. It's kind of wild. And it exposes this potential crack in, the foundation of democracy.
The case, it's GRNL 258435, a 2022 decision from the Supreme Court of the Philippines. And it all centers around this guy, Norman Cordero Marquez, and his repeated attempts to run for senator.
Okay. So we have Marquez dedicated years of his life to advocating for stronger animal welfare laws, like even providing legal aid in cruelty cases, right?
Right.
So clearly passionate about making a difference.
Absolutely. And he decides to, take that passion to the political arena. But there's a catch. Not once, but twice, he's deemed a nuisance candidate by the Commission on Elections.
COMELEC, exactly.
Nuisance candidate. Okay, so what does that even mean, like in this context?
Basically, COMELEC believes that this person, they're not a serious contender. Either they don't genuinely intend to run a proper campaign, or they have, like, no real chance of winning. And they argue this is to protect the integrity of the election process.
So in Marquez's case, what were they saying? Like, what were the grounds for this whole nuisance thing?
So back in the 2019 election, they claimed that he didn't have the money, the financial resources to run a nationwide campaign, and the Supreme Court actually overturned that decision. They said it was flawed.
Wow. Okay, so fast forward, we've got same player, same label, different year, 2022. What's COMELEC's argument this time? This time, they claimed that Marquez was virtually unknown, like across the entire Philippines. And since he didn't have a political party backing him, he wouldn't stand a chance. Basically, they were saying that without that name recognition, without the party support, running a successful campaign would be almost impossible.
So are they saying, like, is it fair to say that they think name recognition and party affiliation are prerequisites to be considered, a serious candidate? Because, I mean, is that really a neutral stance? Or could that, unintentionally disadvantage certain candidates, like, say, newcomers or people with less conventional backgrounds?
That's a really important question. It's really at the heart of what the Supreme Court was grappling with. And Marquez, he argued that his animal welfare work, DID, give him national recognition. He was actively campaigning. He even had this detailed program of governance focused on, you guessed it, animal welfare. This wasn't just about getting his name on the ballot. He was serious. And to prove it, he even went and got a temporary restraining order from the Supreme Court to fight back against COMELEC's decision.
Sounds like he was ready for a fight.
Oh, he was ready. And the Supreme Court, they sided with Marquez, said COMELEC's logic was flawed, and get this, they were worried about, like, democratic principles being at risk here.
Okay, so what did the court find so wrong with COMELEC's thinking? I mean, weren't they just trying to, make sure only serious candidates were on the ballot?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That might be what they were going for, but the court was worried about setting a precedent, right? Like, if you let wealth and fame dictate who gets on the ballot, that's a slippery slope.
Right, because then it's only the already wealthy, the already famous, who even have a shot at the whole thing.
Exactly. It'd be a system where they're the only ones who can really participate. And that undermines the whole equal opportunity idea. And that's like the cornerstone of a healthy democracy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive to say, hey, we're all about equal opportunity, but then make it harder for someone without money or fame to even try.
Exactly. And the court, they didn't see this as just a one-time thing either. They even used the phrase, what was it? Capable of repetition, yet evading review. Meaning COMELEC could keep doing this to other candidates in future elections unless someone laid down the law.
So they were basically saying this could scare people away from even trying to run for office.
Yeah, and there's another layer to their criticism that I find fascinating. See, they weren't just unhappy about COMELEC's reasoning, but also about how slowly they moved on the case. It was so slow, like the election was already happening by the time the court made a decision.
Oh, wow. So even though Marquez won, he still missed his chance.
Exactly. And that brings up a whole other issue, voter disenfranchisement. I mean, when a candidate's case drags on like that, it hurts the candidate, yeah, but it also hurts the voters. They're denied the chance to make a fully informed choice.
It really makes you think, like, how many other people are out there with good ideas who want to serve the public, but they hit these roadblocks and just give up. It's
Yeah,
kind of like this whole thing, this case, it's like ripples, right? This rule about elections seems simple, but then you see how far it goes. Who gets to be a part of democracy? How do voters even get to, actually participate? It's
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, and what's wild is this isn't just a Philippines thing. This case, it makes you think about your own system, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you are, whatever country. What rules seem neutral, on the surface, but then actually block certain people from getting involved?
It's like those invisible fences, but for politics.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, are there other examples of that? Like
Yeah.
in election systems?
Oh, tons, yeah. Like, think about those signature requirements some places have
Yeah.
to get on the ballot. At first, seems fair, right? Got to show you got some support.
Yeah.
But today, if you got to gather those signatures in person, that's way harder for someone who can't afford to travel all over. Or if they live in a place that's, really spread out, they might have the support, but actually proving it becomes a huge obstacle.
It's that whole thing we say everyone should have the same chances, but like, is everyone even starting at the same place? That's what this makes me think about.
Exactly. And that's why this case, it's so important. Equality, opportunity. It's not enough to just look at the surface. Got to look at the whole system. What's underneath? That might be making things unfair.
So for our listeners, thinking about this whole unintentional exclusion idea, what should they take away from all this, whether it's elections or just like life in general?
Honestly, don't take anything for granted. Question everything. Like, really ask yourself, who might this be harder for? Whose voice isn't being heard because of this rule, this way of doing things? That's huge.
Got to move past just seeing the problems and start imagining solutions. Like,
Um,
if you could design an election from scratch, how would you keep things fair and keep out the, the not so serious candidates? How do we get different kinds of voices into government?
That's the conversation to have. In this case, it's like the perfect starting point. Get thinking, you know?
For sure. Norman Cordero Marquez, this animal advocate, he reminds us, democracy, it's not just watching from the sidelines. Got to be informed, got to get involved, got to be willing to say, hey, this isn't working. That's all we've got time for in this deep dive, but doesn't mean it ends here. What